My priority after college was to pursue a fulfilling career. Well, actually, it was to party. But once I was done with that, it was to pursue a fulfilling career. Something that gave me purpose. And the thing that gave me the most feels was teaching, which I'm guessing you can totally relate to. First, I had to conquer all the Praxis exams, which served as gatekeepers to that career. Cue the panic. This required me to learn and relearn a lot of content. Stuff I used to know from college but had long forgotten. The good news is that I got through it all. The great news is that I learned many useful hacks for passing Praxis exams along the way, which I can now share with you, saving you a whole lot of time, struggle, and existential dread. I'm Justin Gallagher, a certified social studies and English teacher who passed several Praxis exams with flying colors, more than once in the top 5% of my exam group. Teaching is a demanding yet fulfilling career choice, and after many years of nailing the assignment, I have some really actionable tips to share with you as you prepare to take on your Praxis exams, specifically their suite of Elementary Education Subtests. Let's start with my first tip, a brief word of caution. Take Praxis's exams seriously. A lot of students take Praxis's Elementary Education Subtests when they're either in college or shortly after graduation, and so they think, hey, I got this. I've been learning this stuff for the past 2 to 3 years. I don't need to study. Wrong. Unless you've got an eidetic memory, you absolutely should study for Praxis exams. And I can't emphasize that enough. In fact, most of the people who end up having to retake their Praxis exams just plain underestimated them in the first place. First of all, the elementary education exams, social studies, science, reading and language, and mathematics, test a huge breadth of content. And secondly, they test your ability to intelligently apply that content knowledge to unique situations and problem sets. So you've really got to know this content, and you need to practice using it by working through Praxis's past tests. Which brings me to my next tip. Take a practice test early on in your prep. There simply isn't a better way to get an accurate read of the challenge ahead of you. Taking a Praxis practice test will allow you to see what content is tested, how the questions are phrased, and how quickly or slowly you're able to answer each question. One cool thing is that all of Praxis's elementary education subtests come with free practice tests, but they also sell additional tests, sometimes 1, sometimes 2 or more, at reasonable prices. So my advice would be to use the free one for early practice and then buy 1 or 2 to practice much closer to your exam date. Look, you might not know all the answers if you kick off your prep with a practice test, right? That's because you haven't really begun or finished your studying yet. But that's kind of the point. The earlier in your prep you see what you're preparing for, the better. The goal is not specifically to do well. It's to understand what you're studying for. Also, seeing the exam in the flesh beforehand will prime your brain for learning, which will make studying a lot smoother for you. Then, closer to exam day, retake the practice test to see how you feel. You should notice a huge improvement in your confidence and performance. Importantly, do these practice tests under timed conditions so that you can learn to manage your time properly. Go onto the Praxis website, download their study companions, and check out the exam blueprints beforehand, as well as their exam format, length, and so on. Know the challenge you're preparing for, and then recreate those testing conditions when you do the practice exams. It's the best way to anticipate what the real thing will feel like. Now that you know what you're prepping for, it's time to start studying. Many of Praxis's elementary education exams, particularly social studies and science, test you on a lot of fact-heavy content. And if you're not smart about how you study, you could quite easily spend twice as much time as you really need to. That's why my next tip is a real game changer. It's a study method that will help you learn twice as fast as any amount of note-taking, highlighting, reading, or listening to lectures. Study efficiently with digital flashcards. Flashcards are the fastest and most painless way to ingrain, retain, and recall the breadth of facts tested by the Praxis's elementary education exams. And so this tip is really the most important in this whole video. If you listen to nothing else I say, let this be the one thing. Each Praxis exam question tests you on a single, discrete unit of knowledge. For example, which mountain range crosses through the state of Washington? Or what percentage of the seats in the U.S. House of Representatives is up for election every 2 years? These concepts fit perfectly into a flashcard's native question and answer format. But what really makes flashcards effective is that they're also the perfect vehicle for spaced repetition. And the very best flashcard app I recommend for the job is Brainscape. Here's why. They've partnered with Praxis to break down their elementary education curriculum for social studies and science into smart digital flashcards, with more courses on the way. With Praxis as partner, these flashcards cover everything you need to know, while also saving you the hours and hours of time it would take to make them yourself. I've linked to all those flashcard collections in the show notes below if you're interested. So why are flashcards the best study tool for this exam? Your brain is biologically designed to learn things over time with repetition. Repetition equals retention, as they say. The more hooks you establish for a piece of knowledge, the more likely you are to remember it. That's why you can pretty easily recall your phone number without much effort at all, because you use it all the time. The problem is, making, reading, and rereading your notes is a stupidly inefficient and time-consuming way to study for any exam, especially those as fact-intensive as Praxis's elementary education exams. Flashcards, on the other hand, allow you to repeat your exposure to the facts again and again at the right time intervals, so as to maximize your brain's retention. And with Brainscape having all those pre-made Praxis flashcards I mentioned earlier, it really is a game-changing study tool for aspiring educators. Forget note-taking and rote memorization. These flashcards will drill you on the high-yield content you need to know to pass the exam the first time around. The last piece of advice I have for you is around the test-taking strategies you should use on exam day. Let's make this one a rapid fire. Firstly, make sure you know the route to the exam venue, as well as the traffic conditions around the time you need to be there. Leave early so that you have a time cushion in case you're delayed on the road. Taking an exam is stressful enough. You don't want to add being late to your anxiety. When you're at the exam venue, try to avoid other stressed out students. Their anxiety can be contagious and you need to get your game face on. When you're in the exam, make sure you read the questions really carefully so that you understand what the exam is asking. Then, before you look at the multiple choices provided, try to answer the question in your head first. Then locate the best answer in the list of options provided. Only spend 1 minute per question, and if you struggle, make a note of the question number. Then skip ahead to the next one and circle back around when you've worked through all the questions. If you don't know the answer at all, take a guess. You won't be penalized for incorrect answers. Final, and I know your teachers have probably drummed this into your head, but give yourself a little time at the end of your exam to read through and double check your answers. Make sure you haven't accidentally left anything out. So there you have it. My best advice on crushing Praxis's suite of elementary education exams from someone who has personally run the gauntlet. Take it seriously. You will have to study. Take a practice test early on in your prep. Study efficiently with flashcards, especially Brainscape, which has a complete set of flashcards for Praxis 5004 and 5005, with more on the way. And go into your exam with a game plan, following the individual tips I laid out for you. If you take this advice, I have every confidence that you will rise to your challenge.